Oh, Samuel,
Hello.
hi. How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to say something. I'm very interested in both the basic income question and the sovereign money question, so many thanks to you for bringing these two very important questions together. I think it's very important. I have just a short comment. I think it will be easy to use the PowerPoint illustrated. Can you see the PowerPoint? I don't know if it's working.
Yeah.
It's working.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that the main question here is if sovereign money creation can be used to finance a basic income, and we can reformulate this question in this way. It is possible to get some kind of free lunch out from the monetary system in some way. And if we look at your, we take your example here, the automation example. So you say that all expenditure is bound by debt-free sovereign money here. So we have the state issuing basically income to the people, and the people is buying goods and service here. If we compare this example with, for example, the MMT, the modern money theory, the description of the economy, so there are some striking similarities here. They would say that already today, all government expenditure is founded by sovereign money creation, because they define sovereign money in the way that as soon as the state is spending something or buying something, then money is created. And when the people pay taxes back to the state, then money is destroyed. So this is, similarity here.
Yep.
And I would say that we will get any free lunch or something extra out from the monetary system here. Not necessarily. It depends on the flows here, if we analyze the flows. And if the money that is flowing to the state equals the money that is flowing out from the state, so these two arrows is the same amount, I mean, then we have gained nothing substantial at all. We have no free lunches gained just by using the word money creation here, just by defining it as money creation. We are not getting something extra that helps us to finance basic income. And I think it may clarify things to take this example and just add a little bit more actors here. If we take we have the government, and we have factories that may be owned by private companies in this example, and then we have the people. And let's say that we have a stable production. The same amount is produced every year of goods and services in these factories, and we have the people that buy these goods and services. And what happens here? Here we can have a almost stable money supply. It's just circulating around here in the economy. So the people, they get basic income from the government. They pay for the services, and then the government need to take this money back through taxes. And taxes is in this example we have no sovereign money creation. It of course depends on how you define sovereign money creation. What you mean with it, but in one way of using the word, here it's the already existing money that's just circulating around in the economy, and here we have a fully automated economy. It's 100% automated. It's private companies that's owning all the factories, and the key here is just through tax to take back all the money that the people spend. We need to take it back and pay it as basic income. So if we...
It's a long question, Samuel.
Yeah.
Trying to remember it all.
I think just it's important to clarify this thing, because you formulate things like in your thought example that sovereign money creation could be used to finance everything, and it depends. If you follow Joseph Huber, for example, then I think he would only say that it's only that if you have an external central bank that adds new money into the economy here, then it's only a small part then, and that would maybe not be enough to finance the basic income. But if you use the MMT definition, then you can say, of course, sovereign money creation is already financing everything, and it can of course finance basic income. But so if you follow Joseph Huber here in the definition, then maybe it's only a small portion of the money that you have that then continues to circulate, and that's the only thing we can gain from the perspective if we want to finance basic income through sovereign money in some way. And what is this coming from? It's inflation and it's increase of GDP. So that's the two sources that may give us something extra here. That was my point.
Well, I must say that's the most substantial question I've ever received. Thanks. A presentation, really. I mean, let me say a couple of entries to the response. First of all, I'm not claiming to be in some sort of guru status that I can answer all questions. I mean, I'm very, very happy to have a debate of this sort. Secondly, with my thought experiment, I would ask that you give poetic license to a thought experiment. So the thought experiment can't then be taken through to all its implications. It is just a thought experiment to establish an idea, to establish a concept. Thirdly, I recognize all you say from MMT because I am familiar with all their literature and I've been to their conferences and so on. And I certainly agree with Stephanie Kelton that a sovereign state can issue its currency. That seems to me to be absolutely clear. Where I differ is that they would say that money is quintessentially debt. I would claim, along with people like Kumhoff and Bassoni, that it isn't. That's a fundamental conceptual difference, which I think the MMT and the non-MMT part of monetary reform need to have much more interaction together, much more debate, much more discussion about. So it is a fundamental difference. But I would also agree that tax is there to moderate aggregate demand. So, yeah, I mean, there are more areas of agreement within monetary reform than there are of disagreement, but the assumption of money at debt is a major disagreement. Now, you're saying that my proposal is that new money is creating a free lunch. Well, that may be my fault for not having explained my thesis thoroughly, but what you haven't done and what I was trying to do is happening here. And what's happening here is what's creating a free lunch. Because the more we can automate, the more we get, apparently, not necessarily a free lunch, but we get far more output per unit of hour worked. And, when you look at real prices since the Second World War, again, I'm referring to the UK, but the real price of every commodity has reduced, apparently, apart from fish and chips, our supposed national diet. The real price of fish and chips has increased, but everything else has reduced because that's reflecting an increased level of prosperity. So it's not a free lunch, but it is an increased level of prosperity made available through productive technology. And then I'm arguing that, the central banking system with the release of money should mirror what's happening in industrial productivity.
Thank you for your answer. I'm sorry to say I can't hear very good here.
Okay.
So we may have to discuss it later on when the
So technology is not quite as reliable as I keep claiming it is. I mean, Marconi managed it, but we're struggling.
But maybe one tried to say something more clarifying. Because I think in your book you are, and also in your presentation now you're arguing that taxes is not as important. But let's say that we don't take any taxes at all in this example. What would happen then? Then we will have these factories that they're just ordering money. People are paying for services and goods, and they will get more and more money and become richer and richer and richer. No, and then we need this is what's causing. Then people need to borrow money
well, you clearly.
But if the tax transfers it back, so it's circulating, then we don't need an increased debt.
Well, you clearly need to manage aggregate demand. I'm not denying that, and management of aggregate demand is through tax. And so I agree with MMT about that. What I don't agree with MMT about is that money derives its value from its acceptance to pay tax. I personally think that money derives its value from its social acceptance to buy goods and services. And my challenge back to Randall is, look, you know, if tomorrow my money wasn't accepted to pay tax, I'd just shrug my shoulders and say, great.
All right. We're back live. So, we ended up on a cliffhanger where Vivan asked Geoff for a question. So, Geoff.
I'm not answering Vivan's question until Vivan appears. So you are here, Vivan. Very devastating questions, if I might say so. Delivered like a ballistic weapon out of the sky. So this question of how could I work for big business and then advocate UBI? Well, as you say, I mean, I graduated in economics and then I did work in industry. So my main career was in technology strategy for industry, what you call big business. And some of it was big business like IBM, and some of it was small business like SMEs, and some of it was for government organizations like the EU when we were looking at reorienting of the Russian economy post-1990. So, yeah, I mean, I have been in both those environments, and frankly, I don't see them as being inconsistent in the way that I know a lot of UBI advocates do. So I'm actually personally not in favour of the kind of polarisation that is suggested between, quotes, big business and social movements like UBI. And actually, in my career, funnily enough, I've been labelled from both sides. So in 1990, when I was working in Moscow, and I was very much opposed to the overnight transformation of the Russian and Soviet economy forced by the IMF and the World Bank, and both of them forced it. The World Bank labelled me as a crypto-communist, and they banned me, they blacklisted me from all their projects. So, you know, on the one side, I was a crypto-communist, and in other cases, people brand you as a neoliberal if you think at all kindly of the industrial complex. So I've actually been called both things, and I'm not sure which I am. And I also remember going to a conference in Berlin, and one person, actually a British person, put up a photograph of Richard Branson on the wall, and she said, well, she said, that explains why I'm against basic income, because he supports it. Well, you know, I don't accept this sort of bifurcation, because as I said to her afterwards, well, I think Richard Branson also thinks that 2 + 2 = 4, and does that invalidate that? So I think we've got to, in my view, I would like to try to back off this sense of inbuilt conflict. Most of my life has been worked in industry, and forgive me, but the caricaturization that I often find in academia of what's happening in industry is exactly that. It's a characterization. The idea that the average industrialist is trying to minimize wages and send all the employees home destitute, it simply doesn't characterize most of the businesses that I worked for, with the exception of some in the fairly rapacious Russian economy of the early 1990s. I mean, in that situation, yes, I did see rapacious, profit-maximizing, grabbing behavior. But in most developed economies, I've never forgotten, on one of my consulting visits in the USA, I was talking with a non-stop computing company, like Stratus and Non-Stop Computers. I met with the chief exec. We went for lunch together in a canteen like this, sat next to a guy I introduced me to. He said, Jim is responsible for cleaning and maintenance here, and we chatted. CEO, the guy did the cleaning, and he said goodbye. And then the CEO said to me, he said, Jim owns $100,000 worth of stock in this company, as does every other employee. You know, so there are more social conscience and more sort of social business models are out there. And most people that I know working in industry do not want to deliver defective products that fall apart. You know, they are proud of the fact that they are delivering something worthwhile. So I personally, and we may differ on this, I don't know, but I don't personally see that huge divide. I want to see something much more consolidated. And much big business, as Keynes said, you know, do want to see effective demand in the economy. So that's why Keynes was against suppression of wage to quote price labour back into work, because he saw just technically, you need effective demand out there in the economy if you're running a business. And Keynes was always saying the business fraternity wants to see people with effective demand. And I think that's still the case. And in some of the high-tech companies, they do see actually what effect technology is having, that it is reducing employment. I mean, one of our other speakers said it wasn't, but you look at the London Underground, for example, where the ticketing system has been recently totally automated and huge numbers of jobs were lost. And by definition, that took demand out of the economy, because the project would only have proceeded if it could guarantee cost reduction. It guaranteed cost reduction because jobs were lost, automation took over, and we've got to recognise that fact, in my view, and compensate that with a basic income at macroeconomic level. So you may want to come back to me on that. The other was you were comparing MMT and debt-free sovereign money, and well, I'd hoped I'd covered some of that in my presentation, because for me, the big difference with MMT is that MMT insists that money is debt. And I don't think that money is quintessentially debt. And we do face these two problems of needing to get income to people and getting debt out of the economy. And I don't see how we're going to get debt out of the economy if we keep insisting that money is quintessentially debt. So I disagree with MMT on that, but unfortunately MMT won't discuss it. And other ways of funding UBI, yes, again, I hoped I had covered some of that, but my colleagues Malcolm Torrey and Stuart Lansley in the UK both are proposing a tax-funded UBI. The problem I have with that is that actually it's sucking demand out of the economy at the same time as it's trying to put demand into the economy. Revenue neutrality isn't actually achieving anything significantly in the macroeconomic sphere. So you end up with UBI schemes whose sole benefit is the removal of means testing and intrusion, which is a benefit. It is a benefit. But I personally don't think it's a big enough benefit to persuade the political debate. And I think we need something that is more radical. So that's my attempt to respond to your three questions, Vivan.
Okay, thank you very much. The reason I put these questions is that I think, I mean, I think we are in the midst of creating a new culture, and I think we have been focusing too much on conflict. So, and often I think that the views that are very close to each other easily turn into a conflict between each other. Yeah. And I think when it comes to UBI, I don't like fighting between this or that form of UBI, because I think everything that serves the cause should be tolerated, and we just hope that we at some point would reach our goal. But thank you.
Well, no, I
said before,
I absolutely agree with that. In fact, I helped set up a UBI hub in the UK with the explicit purpose of trying to coordinate what we were all doing as activists so that we could swap ideas, hear one another, and so on. As I said to one of the organisers, move from having 12 movements, each of one member, to one movement of 12 members. And that aspiration actually has proved very difficult to implement because people have their own patch. and they're quite defensive of their patch. It's not everyone who is happy to, come into a more consolidated hub. And the same with MMT. I mean, I would be delighted to talk, I tried to talk to Randall Rain, to Stephanie Kelton and so on, about the MMT formulation. Randall simply wouldn't talk. He told me to get an education at Levy Institute, and then he'd talk to me and once I was educated. Well, it's pretty difficult to engage in a conversation when one of the prime proponents of MMT actually won't discuss. What can one do? But I agree with you. He was told me to take a hike.
I mean, the academia is no good example of how to advance a new course. I think it was Humboldt who said that science advantage one funeral at a time.
Yeah.
So, but I think here we really need a change of culture.
Well, yeah, one would hope so. I mean, but Planck was right actually. It is very difficult to develop new ideas within the scientific community because people feel nobody wants to stick their head above the parapet and say, look, this is a different way of looking at it, because they know they'll get shot down, they won't get their next job interview and so on. So there's an incredible pressure to conform within academia. If you don't conform to the current dominant school, you won't get even the interview, unfortunately.
Can I have a comment? I think this monetary theory and sovereign money conflict make me think about what's happened in the States in the early 70s, where Nixon wanted to introduce UBI in the US, and the Democrats voted it down because it was too little. So I think that what we need now is a lot of economic theories, and we have to pick from the best, pick the best from all of them. And of course, we also the most important thing we pick is the UBI.
No, well, I agree. I agree with actually what you said earlier about the UK, that the UK needs to spend more on its people's welfare. You're absolutely right. We need to spend more on our health system, where we only spend 8% of GDP on health, whereas Germany spends 12%. So Germany's got twice the number of A&E beds per head of population than we have. So, you're absolutely right.
There's also a thing I didn't mention last time. It was, in Norway have a huge oil fund that we pick the money from. I guess that's sort of a sovereign money as well.
Yes, well, you have your ill-gotten gains in Norway, yeah?